Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Sunday sermon with me, your gracious host, Mike the Mentor. I got something really cool in store for you guys tonight. Well, at least I think it's cool. So, before we get into that, I want to thank you guys for being here, for watching this. If you're watching the replay, thank you for joining in. Um, it's my desire that tonight will be eye-opening for you, that it will be insightful, and it will cause you to ponder and ask some questions. So if you're new to this page, I'll give you a quick, hopefully 30-second intro. My name is Mike King. I started this page because, well, for a multitude of things, but there goes the 30 seconds. I was just sick of seeing people commit suicide, especially men, because of a multitude of reasons, right? They lead desperate lives. A lot of men carry a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and they don't know how to deal with that because society tells us we need to just stuff that all down. And I know what that's like, growing up without a father in my early years, and then one who came back into my life at the age of 15 temporarily, and then on one crazy night blew it all up and disappeared, and then started a 6 year cycle of him showing up every 2 years only to disappear again until he finally died when I was in college. So learning how to deal with that and asking myself, or I guess unconsciously going on this mission to find out what it meant to be a man. What does that look like? What attributes do real men do real men have? And it took me down a long road, and I learned a lot of lessons from that. And I can no longer be quiet about that because the world is getting crazy. And it's my opinion that the world is the way it is because men have refused to accept their responsibilities as husbands, refuse to accept their responsibilities as fathers and as productive members of society for a multitude of reasons that I've hashed out numerous times on this channel. So much for the 1 minute introduction, but that's it in its premise. I am a wide open book. I believe in being transparent, even if it's going to put me in maybe a bad light. So be it. Um, that saying that the truth will set you free has never been truer. And we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about truth. So let's dive into tonight's Sunday sermon. I hope it blesses you. I hope you learned something. And I'm going to share this with you, and then we'll come back here to show my face some more, to ask you guys a couple of follow-up questions, and that'll be it for tonight. So without further ado, here we go. Alright, Sunday Sermon, episode 24. Wow, 24. 24 weeks of doing this. The title of this Sunday sermon is Do You Trust Me? And that's a question God has asked me numerous times in my journey. He's asking that to all of us each day. And as my mentor says, each day he asks that in a different way. And are we going to trust him? But let's get started with this, right? We live in the age of post-truth, where it's becoming harder and harder to know what's true or not. You see that on the news every day with all the fake news, all the scandals, all the distortion of information. It's crazy what they can do now. There's technology out there that they can simulate anyone's face. And to go a step further than that, there's also technology that's out there that goes along with that, where all they need, I think, is like a 10-second clip of you speaking, and then they can pair that up with this face and basically make this copy of you say whatever they want it to say. And that's crazy. And if you don't think that those types of things are going to get abused in the years coming forward, or yeah, years coming, is that correct English? Well, whatever. In the future, you're sadly mistaken. I I believe, maybe this is a little conspiracy-ish, but I believe that there will come a day where the only way that you will know if something's true or not will to be there in person. And even though you still might have reservations about what you just witnessed with your own eyes because of the way that technology is allowing people to manipulate things left and right. So, question for you: what makes someone trustworthy? And I think it's their words and their actions. Do those things line up? Right? There's so many people out there. Just look at the government that say one thing and then they do another thing. And nothing can be more clear than today. There's very few people who lack the integrity, lack the character to follow through with what they say. It's crazy to think, I'm in finance, and my grandpa, he borrowed $1 million on a handshake one time from the bank. Right? He looked the guy in the eye, he shook his hand and said, "I'll pay you back the money." And that's all that it took. And today, if you want to get a loan, for example, for a house, and you get all the way to the closing, you're going to sign over 100 sheets of paper stating that you're going to pay back that money. And that's only within maybe the last 50 years that's changed that much, right? That trust in people has degraded that much. So if we're talking about trust, right, and if this is the case, how do we know the God of the Bible is trustworthy? And why the God of the Bible, and why not a general God? And I think for me, it's I have a religion degree. Most people don't know that. Religion with a minor in econ. And that allowed me to be exposed to a lot of different things with that religion degree, a lot of different religions. But how should I say this? Oh man, I don't know how to say this. I'm fascinated by the Bible, and we'll talk about why that fascination is over any other religious text that's out there. And we'll get into that here. And I'm fascinated in the Bible because of the prophecies that are in the Bible. And to be honest with you, I grew up in the church. That's the religious practice that my mom followed and that my grandparents followed. And that obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but I followed. And it's easy for people to be indoctrinated into believing something when others around them believe it. And, growing up, I heard all the good Sunday school sermons, Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, Daniel and the Lion's Den, all that stuff, right? And to me, they were stories. I mean, I believed them, but I didn't know why I believed them. And it wasn't until, I don't know, I mean, I've read the Bible lots of times, but I'd probably say it wasn't until maybe 6 years ago that I came across one of my mentors now, whose intellect and curiosity just fascinated me, and the way that his mind worked, given his background in cryptology in the military, just in his way of explaining things, just really opened up the door for me. But he always said, "Don't believe what I'm saying. Go look and see for yourself." And I started to do that, and I had a new set of eyes when I approached these stories in the Bible, and it really became eye-opening for me. And I think that's what separates the Bible from everything else, and that's what separates the God that the Bible talks about from every other religious deity out there is prophecy, and we'll dig into that here, right? So Isaiah 46, 9 through 10, God says, "Remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please." Right? We just talked about how can we trust somebody. Do their words line up with their actions? And here the God of the Bible is making a pretty big claim, right? I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. So tonight I want to show you or tell you a story from the Bible that I think perfectly illustrates this, that you may not know about, that I think is pretty cool. So a little context on the Bible, and maybe you haven't thought about it in this way. The Bible's 66 different books penned by over 40 different authors over 2,000 years. I mean, that's crazy. 66 books put together by 40 different authors over 2,000 years, yet they tell the same congruent story. Right? So congruent that you can take parts of the Bible out and the message will still be delivered. The message will still be understood by all over. I mean, that just blows my mind. There's nothing like that in history where there's other works of history that have been compiled that are the equivalent to this thing, I shouldn't say this thing, the Bible that we have, right? This piece of ancient literature, if you want to approach it from there, and that's how we're going to approach it tonight. So don't believe what I say. Let's look at this objectively, which I think I'm presenting it objectively, and then let God speak to you however He may. So in the Bible, right, when it comes to just prophetic scriptures, there's 8,362 predictive verses. The Bible makes 1,817 predictions on 737 separate matters. If you want to go through all those, get yourself a J. Barton Payne Encyclopedia of Biblical Prophecy. Look them up, do the research, and see if you agree. So we're going to talk about Daniel 5 tonight, which is found in the Old Testament. And in Daniel 5, we have King Nebuchadnezzar. And King Nebuchadnezzar was a real person. It's been confirmed via history. And he was the ruler of the once mighty great Babylon, which at one time was the world power. And here is a fine picture, or I think an artist, maybe a depiction based on some old stuff of King Nebuchadnezzar, looking all dapper with his beard and his maybe that's a Babylonian mullet there he's rocking in the back, right? King Nebuchadnezzar. And to give you some context on King Nebuchadnezzar, so he came and God used him to take the Israelites into captivity. Took them out of Israel, brought them to Babylon, and held them there prisoner for 70 years during that first takeover of Jerusalem, right? And allowed them to live among the Babylonians and serve them in some different capacities. And he was responsible for building this thing, and this is an artist's depiction of the great city of Babylon. Now this place is pretty crazy. So what you see on the right there, right, that's only half of it. The river Euphrates went right down, I believe that's the river Euphrates, went right down the middle of Babylon. So you take the right side and then you just double that on the left side. And there you have the city of Babylon. And it was supposed to be, it was considered, impenetrable. It was considered impossible to break into this city. And let me give you some architectural specs that they've confirmed via history. So the walls that you see running around this on the right side, just on the right side alone, I believe, 56 miles in length. Right, the entire perimeter So it's not just the right part, it takes into account the left side as well. But a 56-mile square of these walls. These walls were 80 feet thick. 80 feet thick. I don't even know if there's anything like that in today's modern history of that magnitude. And these walls were also 320 feet high. And then you'll notice on the picture, right, if you look at this outer wall, you see like these posts, right? Those posts I think are every 200 feet, if I remember correctly. And those are guard posts, right, with archers and stuff that would be in there to protect the city in their first line of defense, right? So the only way in and out of the city was this blue gate, right, right there on the right side, and then I believe you had the same thing there on the left side. So that's the only way you were getting in and out of the city. And the Greek historian Herodotus confirms all this, the dimensions and the power and the magnitude of the once ancient Babylon. So this was it. This was the superpower of the world back then. All right, now King Nebuchadnezzar, once he died and he passed away, he had a grandson, and that was King Belshazzar. Now, King Belshazzar was a very flamboyant guy. He liked, as the kids say, he liked to stunt, right? He had some swagger. So what he does one night is he decides he's going to throw this massive party, and he invites like 200 of his nobles to the party, and they get, they're drinking, partying down, dancing, have a good time, whatever they did back in ancient Babylon. And he wants to kick the party up a notch. So he goes and he tells his servants to go get all the fine silverware and temple items that his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the Jewish temple when they overthrew Israel all those years prior. And so they bring those things, and maybe that's one he's got in his hand in this depiction. And they use these utensils as in part of their party, and that pisses God off. So so while they're partying down, a hand appears on the wall and starts to write out some stuff. And the Bible tells us what was written. And then you can find this in Daniel 5:25 through 30. It says, "This is the inscription that was written, many, many tekel parsin. Here is what these words mean." So before we go any further, when these words are written on the wall, everybody freaks out. And Belshazzar summons all his magicians, all his priests, and he says, "I need to know what these words say, and right now." And none of them can tell him what these words say. So his queen comes to him and says, "Hey, there's this guy that lives in Babylon. His name is Daniel, and he helped your great-grandfather Nebuchadnezzar interpret some dreams that he had. And he was so good that not only did he interpret the dreams, but he told Nebuchadnezzar what those dreams were without Nebuchadnezzar even having to say. I think this guy could translate what is on the wall." So make a long story short, they go and they find Daniel. He's an old dude at this time, like 75, 80 years old. And they drag him in there, and they're like, "Hey, what's up with these words on the wall? We hear that, you can interpret this." So Daniel prays to God, and God tells him what they mean. And so he tells King Belshazzar, "God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end." That's what mene means. Tekel means you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres means your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, given a gold chain, was placed around his neck, right? He was given a fat gold chain, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain. So Belshazzar has this party. He does this. He offends God. God tells him, dude, your time's up. And he dies that night. So what makes this so interesting, right, is how did he die? Right? They're inside Babylon, this impenetrable fortress, the world's superpower at that time. And that night, historians put that at October 12, 539 BC. And so what happened is you had this other dominant force coming on the scene at the time, and that guy's name was Cyrus. And he sent his general to Babylon to take it over. And they were actually able to take it over without a battle at all. And what they did is they went upriver, up the Euphrates River, and they made a dam. And that dam caused the water level to drop. And this is during that night, right? So as Belshazzar and all his boys are partying down, you know, the Navy SEALs of the Cyrus army are dropping the water level, and then they just march right down the Euphrates River, since the water is now at the middle of their thighs, and they basically go underneath the wall, and they're able to show up at this party, surround it, and take it over without a fight. Now, why is this so special? Okay, right? So history says that this happens. One, the Bible says this happens, and then history confirms that this happens. So what's the big deal, right? This is what the big deal is. Oh, and this is all affirmed by, once again, the Greek historian Herodotus. Oh, it's got the same thing up there again twice. And this is our artist's rendition of our boy Cyrus, a dapper-looking guy. And so what happens is, after that night, when the party is broken up and they kill King Belshazzar, 17 days later, Cyrus makes his grand entrance into Babylon to let the people know that, hey, I'm the new ruler in town. This is my place. You're going to do what I say, all that great stuff. And when he arrives, he's greeted by Daniel in his purple jumpsuit and his gold chains around his neck. And Daniel takes out a scroll for him to read. And this scroll is 150 years old. Right? So this was written way before Cyrus was even born. And this scroll is the book of Isaiah, which is also found in the Bible. And here's what the book of Isaiah says. And this is what's so mind-blowing. This is Isaiah 44:27 through 28. That saith to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up thy rivers. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Remember that. When we come to Isaiah 45, verses 1 through 2, thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. Quick interjection, up until that point, Cyrus had been conquering the known earth as it was, making his way towards Babylon. And I will loose the loins of kings. Quick note on that. So that means, the loose the loins of kings. That's a polite way of saying the knees are going to buckle. And if you go read the story of King Belshazzar from the Bible, you'll see that when he sees the writing on the wall, his knees begin to buckle because he's so scared. He probably wet himself. To open up before him the two levied gates, and the gates shall not be shut. Remember those big gates on that bridge? I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. So here we have this scroll that's 150 years old, before Cyrus is even on the scene, and the Lord names Cyrus specifically and says what he's going to do. And then Isaiah 45, 3 through 5, and I will give thee the treasures of the darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee. Thou, though thou hast known, though thou hast not known me, I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. So in this prophecy, 150 years old, 150 years before Cyrus was even born, not only does he call Cyrus by his name, he tells Cyrus he's going to call him by his name, and he's going to tell Cyrus exactly what he's going to have Cyrus do. Remember that thing about how do we know we can trust somebody? Because they not only say what they're going to do, then they actually do what they're going to say. Oh, we forgot a little part. There is no God beside me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me. All right. So you gotta put yourself in Cyrus's shoes here for a second, right? So you make this grand entrance with probably, I don't know, a huge entourage of hundreds of people into this city where hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people live, to present yourself as king. And the first thing that happens is this dude in this blinged out purple robe and all this gold around his neck comes running up to you and welcomes you in whatever fashion, and then says, "Hey, you got to see this," and hands you the scroll, this old book that was written 150 years prior, and you read it, and it's got your name in there. Not only does it have your name in there, it tells about what you not only did, but not only what you just did, what you have been doing, and how you are going to, and it talks about what you're, I don't want to spoil it, it talks about what you're going to do after this point. So I got to imagine that Cyrus was, one, pretty amazed. Two, I mean, I'll just be real, he's probably like, holy SH, you know what? I'm sure that would be my response if that's what came up. So let's take a look at what he does. You can find this in 2 Chronicles 36, 22-23. It's all confirmed by history as well. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm and also to put it in writing. This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord their God be with them. Remember that part I told you to remember from the scroll? When God told them that he would use Cyrus to send the people back to build their temple again? Alright, and then now we got Ezra. This is the last thing here. We got Ezra 1, which is found in the Bible as well. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm and also to put it in writing. This is what the king of Persia says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem and Judah. Any of his people among you may go up to Jerusalem and Judah and build the temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem, and may their God be with them. So here we have two separate accounts of the same thing. And in any locality where survivors may now be living, the people are to provide them with silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with freewill offerings for the temple of God in Jerusalem. Then the family heads of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, everyone whose heart God had moved, prepared to go up and build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. All the neighbors assisted them with articles of silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with valuable gifts, in addition to all the freewill offerings. Moreover, King Cyrus brought out the articles belonging to the temple, those same articles that your boy King Nebuchadnezzar that King Belshazzar had been partying with, which Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem and placed in the temple of his god. Cyrus, king of Persia, had them brought by Mithridates, the treasurer, who counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. This was the inventory: gold dishes 30, silver dishes 1,000, silver pans 29, gold bowls 30, matching silver bowls 410, other articles 1,000. In all, there were 5,400 articles of gold and of silver. Sheshbazzar brought all of these along with the exiles when they came up from Babylon to Jerusalem. Alright, and here we have a picture of the stele of, oh doggone it, of Cyrus. This cylinder was discovered by Hormozd Razim in the 19th century, and it can presently be seen in the British Museum in London. And I'll give you two guesses what this stele of Cyrus says. It says, without any battle he entered the town, sparing any calamity. Oh, and just so you know, this is the stele of Cyrus was Cyrus's diary, or was a diary of Cyrus that was written about him at that time. I returned to the sacred cities on the other side of the Tigris, the sanctuaries of which have been ruins for a long time, and established for them permanent sanctuaries. I also gathered all their former inhabitants and returned to them their habitations. So here he is in his own diary talking about how he took Babylon without a fight, just as it was predicted, and then how he returned to the Jews, or the Israelites, their sacred articles, and sent them back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. All as it was predicted 150 years prior by the God of the Bible. So to me, that, my friends, is pretty freaking crazy to see that. So given all that, I want to leave you with three quick questions here. The first question is, do you trust Him? Right? Do you trust God? Second question is, what will you trust Him with? Trust Him with just some things, one thing? Or are you going to trust Him with everything? And then three, what will you trust Him for? Right? What do you need? What are you hoping for? So that's just peeling back a little bit on my world and my love for prophecy, and for all these different crazy rabbit trails that you can find in the Bible if you're willing to just read it and get to know it from front to back. So I present that stuff to you tonight. Do with it as you may. Once again, I'm just being obedient to what God put on my heart. So appreciate you guys checking out the Sunday sermon. Looking forward to, hope you guys having a good week. And we will see you back here tomorrow for My Life Monday. Have a good night.